Reddit. What's your funniest go-to story that is most often requested by your friends? I am frequently asked to retell this story. My friends and I were at a bar and a cover band was playing. The lead singer was being obnoxious. He was hitting on all the women in the audience in a very lewd manner, and he was being far too pretentious for being in a cover band. It was making everyone uncomfortable and annoyed. At one point during the show he says, "I would like someone special to take the microphone and say a few words." He then lowered the microphone stand so that the microphone was right where his crotch was. I don't know how he had originally planned this segment to pan out, but before he could say anything, I yelled in a high-pitched voice, "I'm so tiny." The singer was stunned. The audience laughed and cheered. Clearly flustered, he awkwardly raised the stand again and went into the next song. I don't think I'll ever have that good of a comeback again. Probably the time I threw up in my sister's eye. I had just chugged a Pepsi and my sister was lying down on her bed, with a glint of evil in my eyes. I leaned over, getting ready to let out the largest belch that was stirring in me. She looks up at me and I get ready to release this horrid belch on her face. Instead of a belch, I threw up bile and Pepsi in her eye. She ran to the bathroom screaming, "You threw up in my eye." Oh my god, it burns. I was laughing so hard I ended up throwing up on myself. That was 10 years ago and we both can't tell this story without laughing about it. This is kind of gross, but I call it the Circle K story. The night before I drank probably 8-10 beers with friends and totally forgot that the next day my mom wanted me to take her out to a Dia de los Muertos festival happening downtown. I live in the Phoenix metro area, so I drive us out there. My girlfriend is along as well, and we walk around for a bit. We have some really good pulled pork sandwiches and some jamba juice. Yes, I know you'd expect Mexican food, but that's what we ate. Once we'd seen everything we wanted to see, we decided it was time to head home. On the way back to my car though, my stomach started bothering me. You know that feeling you get when it's like, well, I know diarrhea is coming, but I think I can make it. It didn't feel that bad, so I figured I'd make it home. Only a 15-minute drive. Well, 5 minutes into the drive, I realized that wasn't the case. Apparently the mix of beer, pulled pork, and juice had become some sort of ultra-pressurized crap bomb that was ready to explode any moment. I started freaking out, trying to drive safely as possible while also locating a bathroom. But the part of town I was driving through didn't have much of anything, just closed down shops and nowhere to really stop and use the restroom. Then I saw it, a Circle K corner store on the horizon. I parked as fast as possible, legs shaking, and ran inside, ready to release the nuclear bomb that inhabited my bowels. I asked the clerk, "May I use your restroom?" to which he replied, "No, employees only." At this point my mouth just sort of dropped open. I literally could not hold it any longer. "Please, this is an emergency," I pleaded. But he just stared at me, smug in the fact that I would not receive the key to my lower intestinal salvation. P.F. and I unable to walk. I ran back out to my car, ready to drive down the street and hopefully find another place to crap. But my mom had gotten out and was looking at a freaking red box. I had no time. I had to go, and there was nothing else I could do about. So I did what any sensible person would do. I sprinted back around behind the store, dropped my pants, and crap against the back wall of the place. It was the most embarrassing yet relief-inducing moments I have ever experienced. And as I began to wipe my butt with some random receipts I had left in my wallet, I looked up to notice a group of 8-10-day laborers that had been standing on the street corner watched me do the whole thing. They were laughing hysterically, a few of them clapping and giving me thumbs up. When I made it back to my car for a hasty getaway, my mom had the gall to ask, "Do you still need to go?" When I was younger, my grandparents lived in Mexico and we went to visit them every year. Post 9/11, this was never a fun experience, but one year made it very interesting. About a month before the trip I was into magic like any preteen is, thinking it would get him the bee and all that. So I went to a magic shop and found an amazing invention. A light bulb that lit up when you held a penny or some form of metal to it. It was awesome. The only fault I could find with it was when you shook it a little it sounded like a piece was loose. So I had the great idea of bringing the light bulb with me when I went to visit my grandparents just to show them the young magician I was becoming. So I stuffed it into bunches and bunches of clothes and somehow made it through security. No one really searched our bag. Guess 6 Caucasians didn't really register as a blip on the radar. Nothing important happened during the trip. The fun part begins when we were heading home. In a rush I didn't really pack the light bulb deep down in my bag, so it was super easy to see on the x-ray machines they put your stuff through. So we're running late, and when we finally get to the security line they put our bags through barely looking twice at them until they reach my bag. The guy watching the screen tells us to step out of line and wait for someone to handsack our stuff. We're at this point confused. We were more concerned about bringing fruit and vegetables onto the plane. The authorities were really hammering that down. They dive straight into my bag and pull out a light bulb. My toy light bulb. Security flips the frick out understandably and begins questioning my father right there. I try to help him out by yelling out, "Wait, no, it's not a bomb. It's a magical light bulb. It lights up when you put metal near the base." Fear was etched upon the faces of everyone there. Fear on the security officers for they thought this kid brought a bomb onto the plane. Fear on my families for they thought this little crap was about to get them a free prostate exam, and on mine cause I thought they were about to break my light bulb. Luckily, one of the security guards recognized my utter stupidity and looked at it really closely and decided to test it out. It lit up. So after another half hour of questioning and threats, "If you ever pull this crap again we could have you detained permanently," we managed to make our flight just barely. TLDR. IT's a magical light bulb is not something one should yell out at an airport post 9/11. I was taking Arabic around that time. During a massive snowstorm we made it a couple hours out to the airport when I realized I'd forgotten my ID. Traveling with no driver's license and a large stack of Arabic flashcards and a copy of the Quran in 2003 was not fun. Easily my most requested story is the time I broke my toe during sex. So this was several years ago. A little backstory first. I'm generally not ticklish at all except for a single spot on my back. It's a cluster of nerves or something that, when poked, makes me freak the frick out and usually makes a leg kick out. Anyway, while going at it on this couch at my place she unintentionally grips my back right on the sensitive spot. My leg straightens right into this pillar off to the side of the couch and I clip the edge with my pinky toe with a gross crack. Now I was young and she was hot so I didn't pay much mind to it until 30 seconds after when I glance at my foot and see the toe bent 90 degrees off to the side and turning this gross shade of blue. The same shade as my balls after having to stop and drive to the hospital. TLDR, this kills the mood. This happened to me just a couple weeks ago but my brother thinks it's hilarious so he makes me tell it to our friends. I was on a Greyhound bus from Oklahoma City to Amarillo, Texas, and I had the pleasure of sitting behind a loud and obnoxious African American couple, and I do mean pleasure. The stuff they said had me stifling laughter the whole 4-hour bus ride, but probably the most quote-worthy thing they said was when I was trying to walk towards my seat and the couple were in my way. I was waiting patiently for the lady to finish whatever she was doing in the aisle when the man said they trying to get through. Move out the way. And the lady said I'll move when I dang well want to. This ain't Burger King. They can't have it their way. Tears of laughter. Using this. I was at the mall around Christmas time of '08, waiting for my sister to get one of those Simon debit cards at a kiosk nearby. Santa was downstairs doing a Pics with Pets promotional thing. So every once in a while people would walk in with their pups. I am watching the people come in with the dogs and just geeking out over them in general when this one lady comes in with a group of like 4 or 5 West Highland Terriers. One of them I guess had a crap nugget trapped in its fur, and it just kinda shook out. That was funny enough, I guess, but nobody noticed and I kept waiting for anybody to step on it. It became like a Poopland mine, a game of chance in my mind. This lady dang near ran over it in her stroller, which I thought would be the height of the turd hilarity, until this kid comes near it, he was like 7 or 8, and starts to break dance next to the turd. He is seriously doing these crazy butt dance moves next to it. I was like, how the frick does he not see it? At this point my sister comes over and wanted to go, so I point to the crap and she immediately understands. Not 10 seconds later, this dude in a nice butt suit is shoving past this old lady and bam, karma. He slips in the crap, does a fricking Scooby-Doo slide about 10 feet and falls backwards. I have never laughed so hard in my life. When I was younger, my mother was driving my brother and I down to North Carolina to visit some relatives. It was the middle of the summer and scalding hot outside, and of course the car was acting up and the AC wasn't working properly. After a couple hours of driving through NC with only the windows to cool us off, steam or smoke or something started coming out from under the hood. So my mom pulls off the highway and parks in front of what looks like an abandoned motorcycle repair shop. She gets out of the car and starts trying to fix it, and this large bearded man comes out of the apparently not abandoned store and starts talking to her. My brother and I listen and figure out that this guy works at the repair store and can easily fix our car and will do so for free. While he's doing so, he starts talking about the extremely liberal bumper stickers that my mother has on the car. He sees the Obama 2008 inches sticker and starts talking about how if Obama won, he was gonna move to Canada. Not because he's black, I'm not racist, but because he's a Muslim. At this point my brother and I are getting weirded out by this guy, but my mom puts on a polite face and nods her head cause he's fixing our car for free. He then notices the Bush Orwell sticker and thinks it is serious and that Bush really ran with someone named Orwell. After about 20 minutes of his bizarre conspiracy theories, he starts talking about how his wife was trying to open up a little ice cream place in the back of the repair shop. Now, at this point my brother and I have decided that this guy is obviously a crazed serial killer who is trying to lure us into the back of this shop so he can horribly murder us. Because who the frick has an ice cream shop in the back of an auto repair shop? He asks my mom if she wants to buy some ice cream, and my brother and I are furiously shaking our heads no for the love of God, NOOOO at her from inside the car, but her southern politeness takes over and she says yes, since he fixed the car for free. So we follow this guy back into the recesses of the repair shop, past all the rusty tools and hanging hooks. The ice cream was actually really good. This was back in college. A few of my friends threw a party at their house. We were all drinking and having a grand time. I meet an attractive looking man and later that night when everyone had gone to bed, we were in the living room. We started hooking up. In the middle of my shirt coming off the lights go on and I hear my friend Tyson say what the frick. I look behind me to apologize but he's not looking at me. In a chair to my right my friend Richard is sitting and it's staring at me and the guy hooking up with a glass of whiskey in his hand and only in his boxers. He looks me directly in the eyes and says please, don't stop. I have so many stories about my friend Richard. Richard sounds like a dong. My friends and I kept this story under wraps for several years but since it's been out in the open, it is requested all the time. Myself and 2 other male friends were vacationing in Cancun one spring. It was our second day there and we had been into the tequila and infamous, all-inclusive hotel food, all day. Stuffed from tacos, hot dogs, and undercooked burgers for the last 4 meals. That night the 3 of us were out at a club when Nathan had to leave because he was too drunk. So, he took a cab back to the hotel while we stayed. A couple hours later myself and the other guy pick up 2 girls and bring them back to the hotel. The hotel room was set up like an apartment and had 2 bedrooms. One room had a king-size bed, which drunk Nathan was sleeping in, and the other had 2 queen-size beds which unfortunately meant that the 4 of us were going to be sharing the room for sexy time. At least that's what we had planned on. We weren't even home for 20 minutes when one of the girls says she smells something weird. We all agree. She opens the door, looks into the living room kitchen area and lets out the most horrific scream that has haunted my dreams ever since. Both girls sprint out the front door before we can ask what's wrong and we never see them again. Great, second night in Cancun and still haven't been laid. We look out the door to see that Nathan has sprayed diarrhea all over the kitchen and living room. We didn't realize it until after but when he's drunk he tends to sleepwalk. If you have ever seen Dumb and Dumberer, it was like that bathroom scene where Lloyd rubs the chocolate bar everywhere. There was crap on both couches, the kitchen counter, the kitchen chairs, even on some of clothes that had been sitting out. Awesome. A quick disaster scene analysis led me to believe that Nathan thought a bar stool was the toilet, so he sat down on it and emptied his colon. After that he just wandered around drunk and asleep, dripping semi-liquid crap all along the way. We barricaded ourselves in the other room and dealt with the entire cleaning staff and hotel management in the morning. TLDR. I was cock-blocked by my friend spraying liquid crap out of his butthole all over the room. Well, lucky for your friend the liquid crap came out of his butthole, as opposed to, elsewhere. When my little brother was in first grade, he was sent home with a bad conduct report on Thursday afternoon. My dad told him that if he had to pull a fish, the teacher's warning system involved the students pulling a paper cutout of a fish out of a jar. The next day, he'd be unable to have his best friend over that weekend for their planned sleepover. Brother goes to school and, sure enough, he was admonished in the early afternoon for talking while the teacher was talking. She tells him, "Go pull a fish." Brother stands up, walks right past her desk, and mutters, "Well, my weekend's fricked." Addendum. He was of course sent to the principal's office and put on the phone with my mother. She was scolding him, saying things like, "I don't know where you learned that word. We don't use that word in this family." Then the secretary gets on the phone and says, "Hey, is that you?" My mom says, "Yes, I was just talking to Jay." The secretary says, "Oh." I'm sure many of you have been drunk to the point of throwing up. Natural reaction, right? Body full of toxins. It wants to remove them in the quickest possible way. Well, an old housemate of mine does not, cannot and will not throw up whilst inebriated. One evening, he was out at a fancy-ish do in a fairly nice suit. At about 2 AM, he stumbles back into the house as I'm sitting there with early morning Xbox for company. He sits down, and a smell starts rising. Eyes watering. I compliment him on the excellence of his flatulence, and continued trying to PWN some N00BS. He starts drunkenly mumbling about how good a night he's had, and then my game ends. N00BS regrettably unwound. So in his alcohol-addled state, he decides it's a great idea to see what wonders Freeview has to offer. There are horrors there that HR, Geiger and HP, Lovecraft combined could not envision. Never, ever go there. All this time, the aroma is spreading, and the room seems to be taking on a slight sepia tinge, though that may well have been my imagination. Eventually, the housemate waddles through to the bathroom, and the nostril-scorching scent recedes. After an hour or so of him being in there, I decide that making sure he survives is no longer my responsibility, and go to my room. The following morning, the source of the smell was made quite clear. My housemate's method of removing alcohol from his body was to crap it out, and he had been doing so since before he had walked in the door. He had left the room when the poop soup had started trickling from his trousers, and left a trail of fecal footprints leading to the bathroom. The waddle I thought had been a desperate attempt to stay upright was in fact the walk of a man whose only aim in life is to not leak any more of their diarrheal leavings outside of their boxers. I can only conclude that he had in fact exploded when he got there, given the fact that the bathroom now resembled a Jackson Pollock painting in monochromatic brown. He wisely destroyed his suit to remove some of the evidence. How the jacket had become crap stained, I don't know. The shoes were possibly the worst, coated inside and out with his stool. He ended up claiming it was dog spore and getting his parents to clean it. It was days before any of us could enter the lounge or bathroom again without smelling it. We wondered about simply destroying the sofas. TLDR. I ran out of synonyms for poo because of my housemate's doings. I went to Tahoe with some friends and ended up gambling at the blackjack tables. At one table, there were two guys sitting next to us that were completely wasted and being hilarious. One of the guys gets 21 and stands up and yells at the top of his lungs, "Winner winner apple pie." I look at the guy and say, "What the frick? I thought it was chicken dinner," and he replies, "Nobody frickin' likes chicken, and everybody loves apple pie." I've been saying that phrase ever since. TLDR. Winner winner apple pie. I like chicken. My buddy and I were waiting to be seated at Chili's one time. Restaurant was absolutely packed. So as the waitress is leading us to our table, a family, mom, dad, and kid, are leaving. The kid is about 11, and he just barrels into me. I'm fairly large, so I pretty much knock the kid down. I mutter a sorry man, you okay, and as I turn around, the mom blurts out, why don't you watch where you're going? I turn back around, look the mom square in the face, and say, why don't you tell your little stupid monkey bastard kid to watch where he is going? She just stares at me, mouth hanging open. My buddy, 6'4", ex-marine, literally grabs me by the collar and yanks me away. Dumbass, he says to me, she was talking to her kid, not you. I was at a dilapidated house in the middle of nowhere while working for a public utility company. The elderly gentleman who lived there came out and started chatting me up. He told me he was about to build an underground prison on his property, but instead of iron bars they would be lasers. I'd like to see those Sanuva be get out now, he said. I was entertained enough to ask who he was going to have build it for him. He was caught off guard for a moment and then made a noise like he was maybe hocking a lodgy or something. Who? Donald Duck. Well, this isn't a widely requested story, but every Christmas it usually gets retold and everyone has a laugh. My uncle had been drinking Jack Daniels all day one Christmas and he started to complain that his current drink tasted funny. He said that it tasted soapy, so he started telling my mom that she probably hadn't rinsed the glass out well enough and there was leftover soap in it. Now of course we're not the type of family that wastes good Jack Daniels, so he keeps drinking all the while telling my mom off about how she should rinse the dishes better. He finally finishes his drink and there sitting in the bottom is a stink bug, with arms and legs missing. So he must have swallowed bits and pieces of the stink bug. He was so grossed out and his reaction was priceless. So now every time he has a drink everyone tells him to check for stink bugs. TLDR. Stink bugs and whiskey taste like soap. A few years ago my car got stolen out of my driveway in the middle of the day while I was home, and I didn't hear the thieves taking it because I was playing Grand Theft Auto with the sound up. Oh, the irony. Was walking to my apartment complex when I saw an officer in pursuit, on foot, of a man dressed in all black. The man being chased ran around the corner and down the back path that I was currently walking towards. The officer not too far behind stops the pursuit once he meets up with me. He then pulls out his notepad and begins asking me questions. Q. Did you see anyone running through here wearing all black? A. Yes. If you turn around you can still see him. The man still running down the back path, clearly visible. Q. If you were to see him again would you be able to identify him? A. If you just turn around you can identify him yourself. At this point the man running makes a turn and runs into the complex halfway to the street. Q. So you saw him run down here? Can you tell me where he went? A. He just ran into the complex about halfway to the street. The officer grabs his radio on his shoulder and informs any other officers that the perpetrator was now on 29 Ave, the street. I start getting irate and tell the officer that he didn't make it to the street and is somewhere inside the complex. At which point the officer says he understands and starts running back the way that he came. So I tell my friends this story in case they get in trouble from a CST McLeod. He doesn't seem to be the brightest in our local law enforcement. TLDR. Officer chasing suspect stops me to ask questions instead of resuming pursuit. Pretty sure that isn't a real cop. They are trying to see if they can get away with something. My brother wears glasses. At the hairdressers he has to take them off, meaning he can't see at all. He had a long conversation with an elderly gentleman regarding hair transplants. After the gentleman had left, the hairdresser turns to my brother and says, "You realize it was Cliff Richard, right?" TLDR. My brother chatted about hair transplants with Cliff Richard without realizing. I was bored at work and decided I would try to freak out this coworker. I took a piece of paper and put a staple in it. Then I folded a piece of tape to make it double-sided and stuck it to the back of the paper covering the staple. I took out the rest of the staples from the stapler. I say, "Hey Charles, check this out." Put the paper on my forehead, sticking the tape to my forehead, and staple the paper, using the pressure to push the tape to my forehead. I think to myself, man, I hit that stapler pretty hard. I pull the paper off and it gives some resistance and I think that some of the tape must be stuck in my hair. I look at the paper and see the set up staple, along with a new staple. A small segment of staples was left in the stapler. Charles is sitting there, mouth agape, as blood trickles down my forehead. I try to play it cool and walk to the bathroom, but as soon as I get around the corner I grab my forehead and start muttering frick, 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 I apply some pressure with a wet paper towel and get the bleeding to stop. Go back to my work area and Charles says that's the craziest crap I've ever seen. I lost my crap, you win. My friends always ask me how I got the scar on my lip. I had inhaled all the helium from my little sister's Mickey Mouse balloon and passed out. I was living in upstate New York and was addicted to this amazing meatball and garlic pizza at a local pizzeria. I became a regular and got to know the owners, a husband and wife, to the point where they'd greet me by name and we'd chat whenever I came in. After a while, I took some time off from the pizza BC. I was getting a little round. One day, I'd been driving around all day running errands and, for some reason, listening to the Snoop album, Doggy Style, over and over. I was having an early 90s reminiscence, I guess. I was hungry and decided to call in for a pizza after several months of being good. I walk into the place and owner, the husband, greets me heartily, asks where I've been, and tells me I've lost weight. I grin, point down at the pizza and say very loudly, well, it's certainly not from eating poops. I meant to say pizza, but the Snoop lyrics had obviously infiltrated my powers of speech. We both froze, and I stammered I mean pizza, grabbed my pie, and bolted. BTW, I am female. TLDR. I explained my weight loss by yelling that I hadn't been eating pee when I meant pizza. Every year, the 9th grade honors English class participated in a high school writing contest for my state's Holocaust Memorial Foundation. I went to a Catholic school, but we always entered when the time of year came around, because that was when we were usually reading the book night. Anyway, the contest had 3 categories: poetry, short story and essay. This year, the theme was diversity. I was one of my teacher's favorites, so when I turned in my poem a week before deadline, he told me he was thrilled to read it. The next day he handed it back and said, "This is good, but not your best work. I really think you should try the essay." But I didn't want to. For the next 3 days, I wrote a short story, then handed it in. Same deal. Dodjo, I like this, but I really want to see you write an essay. How about an essay on friendship? Don't you think the judges would like an essay on friendship? No, I did not think the judges would like an essay on friendship, because that was stupid and unrelated to the Holocaust. But later that night I was feeling snarkly and wrote the sappiest, most contrived, most ridiculous essay I could about friendship. I did not proofread. I did not even read it all the way before hitting print and handing it in the next day. Flash forward 2 weeks. It's the night of the awards ceremony for the contest. Knowing that I have no chance, I choose not to go. And while I was not there, this happened. For each category, they announced the winner. If the winner was present, they would come up to the podium and read their winning entry. If not, the second place winner would read his or hers. My stupid, thoughtless essay won. But I was not there, so the second place winner read his tear-jerking tale about his grandmother's experiences in a concentration camp. It's funny because I am a terrible person. TLDR. Entered Holocaust essay contest with Bull's entry to mock my teacher. Won contest, beating out a kid who wrote about his family who survived the actual Holocaust. Till I'm not the only one with an honors English teacher obsessed with the Holocaust. Copper pasta from the Ask Reddit post. I just posted this in fairly recently. I'm on my phone so I apologize for any errors. 7th grade. Got invited to a party where everyone was drinking. This happened to be my first time drinking, so I only sipped my beer. 2 of my neighbors, we'll call them Jill and Jane, are smashed. 7th grade. Falling down, slurring, wasted. Everyone is leaving the basement to go outside when Jill and Jean say, "Hey Gottef and Bubba, want to see our special dance?" Being somewhat attracted to both of them, I nodded and sat down. Cue the horror show. They both start drunkenly dancing around each other, and every time they did a particular interesting move, there was a weird farting sound I'd never heard before. This continued for about a minute, and then they initiated the finale, a running jumping into each other's arms hug, accompanied by a weird, squishy fart noise. I sat in stunned silence watching, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. They both looked at me smiling goofily, until I managed to ask them how they were making those fart noises. They excitedly explained to me that they could fart out the front as well as the back. Only until a year later did I realize what I had seen. TLDR. I watched two drunk girls perform a ceremonial queef dance. I never thought that I would truly have no idea how to feel about a story. I'm utterly confused about how I'm supposed to feel after reading that. Great TLDR. By the way, this is a popular tale from my life amongst my friends. We were walking home after an all-night bender and we had pushes down some late-night kebabs. My girlfriend and I had separate flats at the time, and since her place was closer than mine we decided to go to hers. On our way home, this loud annoying drunk guy came up to us to ramble, and kept following us in the same direction we were headed. We were polite and went with it, humoring him. He was hanging over us with his arm, like we were almost dragging him along. He was unpleasant and nonsensical. Naturally, the situation started to get tiresome rather quickly. At this point we were outside our apartment building, so I thought I should get rid of this guy before he asks himself in for a natch spiel. He wasn't pleased when I asked him to go on down the street while we went inside without him. We started arguing at the top of the stairs of the building. He said he lived on the 5th floor and should come in with us. Yeah right, I said. This building only has 4 floors. Things were said, and he jumped me. I am a normal sized no trouble kind of guy and had never been in a fight before in my life. This guy took me by the throat and lifted me up against the wall. Seeing my girl's expression of horror on her face, I flipped and managed somehow to wiggle out of his grip and knock him down. While he was scrambling on the ground, I quickly pushed him out the door and down the stairs. I promptly locked the door and heard him scream "I'm coming in" from outside of the door while his keys entered the lock. I instantly realized what I had done, so we jetted up to our apartment and locked ourselves in. More importantly, locked him out. I heard him run furiously up the stairs, but he never found us. My first and only fight. TLDR. Kicked a man out of his own building because I thought he didn't live there. He did. This will probably get buried, but I'll try anyway. For backstory, I'm exceedingly clumsy, to the point where it's almost a superpower. I can be perfectly in the middle of picking up a pen, and somehow it'll get caught on something, flip up into the air, spin around and land in my hair, all in the space of a second. This actually happened, in front of my boss at the time. I awkwardly grabbed the pen to finish signing what I had to sign. But anyway, this one particular story, which my friends love to tell to any person who we run into after long absences, is as follows. We'd all been staying the night at a friend's house back when we were teenagers, and as teenage boys do, we stayed up all night watching movies and playing video games. The next day we were heading to a local shopping center to watch a movie or something, and we were exhausted. We stepped into a Starbucks in the bottom corner of the shopping center at something like 8 AM in the morning on a Sunday. Very quiet, near deserted, except for 2 old ladies sitting at the table next to us. After we sat down with our coffees in a trance-like state, no one really said much, since we were pretty drained. I was sitting with my coffee held in my lap, on the verge of falling asleep, when my super clumsiness reawoke. Completely out of the blue, I spasmed, flipped the nearly full cup of coffee over into my lap, sat up instantly and screamed out "Frick, me dead." To this day I'll never live it down, and I could never believe the shock or horror on the faces of the otherwise lovely old ladies. Whenever I do something clumsy around friends outside my immediate circle, all my close friends shout out "Frick, me dead," laugh, and then explain the story to the confused onlookers. In this way, my legend will live on. My best friend likes for me to tell everyone about the time I was pulled over by a cop. I pulled over and he tapped on my window. He asked me if I knew why I was being pulled over and I said it's because I'm black, isn't it? The cop was a black man, and I am a glow-in-the-dark white girl. The cop got a kick out of it and I was left off with a warning. She just likes me telling stories of what I say to cops in general when I get pulled over. I'm a speeder. There was another time I was driving my boyfriend's car and I got pulled over because of the window tint. I wasn't even speeding in this case. Anyhow, the cop said that the tint was too dark and I told him it was prescription. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.